And I will ask you for just a second to, we're going to divert away from education for just a moment, although I promise we'll come back to it. And instead, I want to talk to you about money, and specifically a financial problem for a moment. Consider, if you would, a sum of $500, and imagine that you had an expense pop up unexpectedly that was going to cost $500. How would you meet this expense? The reality is, and many of the people in the room potentially would just sort of pay it, and it would be no issue whatsoever. For a good chunk of Americans, a recent study found that 6 in 10 would not do that. They would actually need to find some other means to pay for this. 2 out of 10 would put it on a credit card. Some of those would pay that credit card bill at the end of the month, and many would not, and would continue to roll that balance. And another 4 in 10 would have a lot of difficulty meeting this expense. They would either seek a loan from family and friends, they would seek a loan from a company, and in some cases they might have to cut consumption to meet that financial obligation. And in some cases the financial obligation, depending on what it was, just wouldn't get met, and they'd wind up defaulting on that. I mention this to point out sort of the illiquidity of large segments of the American consumer population. This was a segment that we saw traditional loans being sort of very poorly targeted for, and wanted to find a better financial product that we could present to the illiquid American consumer. So we founded Align Income Share Funding to use a financial product called an income share agreement to provide capital to this customer segment. Fundamentally, let's take a look at one income share agreement and how it functions. Essentially what we're doing is we're providing money upfront to the consumer in exchange for an agreed upon and fixed percentage of their income, the way we define it as salary and wages, for some fixed period of time. Relative to a traditional loan, we're going to move their payments and adjust that proportional to the income that they have coming in. So in this example, you've got an individual who starts out making $60,000 a year. 12 months into their contract, they find themselves unemployed and out of work for 6 months in this example. They regain employment. Over time, they get a couple of promotions, and eventually they get up to, in the 3rd year of their contract, they're making $70,000 a year instead. With a traditional loan, during this period of unemployment, that individual would have been exceptionally unlikely, especially within this illiquid consumer segment, that individual would have been exceptionally unlikely to be able to continue to make those payments. That's a bad outcome for the company providing that loan. They're not getting paid, and the individual's defaulting on their obligation. It's also a really bad outcome for the consumer, right? The consumer is falling behind on this. It's stressful. The company that gave them the loan may be seeking remedies against them. And at the very least, to the extent they're falling behind on these payments, that's going to reflect negatively on their credit report. With an ISA, we're going to adjust their payments proportionally. While they're out of work, they don't owe us any payments. And significantly, that doesn't extend the term of their contract. We're not, there's no negative amortization or anything. Those are just permanently forgiven payments proportional to kind of the risk that we're taking with this contract. As you can imagine, that's a much better outcome for this individual who goes through this scenario here. So let's take a look at why we use ISAs. We already talked about the flexibility that they provide for the consumer. Additionally, I think there are a couple of other reasons that the consumer seeks this financial product. Specifically, there's a much better alignment of interests with an income share agreement than with a traditional loan. The company providing them with that money cares very directly about their labor market outcomes and how they do both in the upside and downside. Whereas with a traditional loan, if you can sort of make your payments, the company that gave you the loan sort of is indifferent at that point. We also think fundamentally it's a simpler, more transparent structure than, say, a traditional loan in many ways. There's no amortization to calculate. LIBOR is not involved in any way. There's no APR. We're literally just taking a fixed single-digit percentage of someone's salary and wages, which is pretty easy math for most folks to do. I would also point out for the companies providing these products and the investors in this product, unlike a traditional loan, you have financial upside. You should experience, on sort of a risk-adjusted basis, lower defaults. And if there are any investors in the room who are sort of aware of this product but haven't maybe kind of drilled down into the details, it provides a tremendous mitigant to inflation in your portfolio and a lot of sort of hedging against interest rate risk, which is very attractive to a lot of investors. Oops. So thus far, we've been in business for a couple of years. We have only focused on the working employed consumer segment thus far. We have deployed about $6 million across a little over 1,000 contracts thus far within this consumer segment. The average age of the folks we're providing funding to is almost 40 years old. So they've been in the labor market for some time. Our average terms have historically been, we're helping folks meet between like a $1,500 and $12,000 financial need. Anywhere from kind of 2 to 10 years have been our terms thus far. And as I said, we're generally taking a single-digit percentage of someone's income. A little over a year ago, we closed our Series A round. We raised $6 million in equity. And we also raised a $25 million financing facility to continue to fund through this portfolio. And we're based in Chicago. Our Chief Marketing Officer, Lindsay, is here as well, and we've currently got 20 employees. This is just a quick profile on sort of our existing customers. But as we pointed out at the outset of this, this is a fundamentally reactive use case for an ISA product. And so we've spent the last several years in the market refining our collections and our ability to kind of service this asset, our ability to risk price and originate and underwrite this product, refining our regulatory approach. And I think now we are fundamentally starting to focus a little bit more on what we call kind of a proactive use case for this product, where it's going to be transformational for the individual's human capital. So this can be sort of adult learning cases, things of that nature. This is our management team. Myself, Lindsay's here, and actually our COO all met as undergrads about 20 years ago. If you would like to learn more, please go to helloalign.com, or you can email me at npopkins@helloalign.com.